Welcome back to abandoned Cape Breton. As Cape Breton has been under some extreme weather this past few weeks, it's been tough to get footage. Nevertheless, I've started a new category of videos, and I'm going to do something a little fun with this new series, which I'll explain in a minute, involving abandoned military structures. Cape Breton has a surprising and interesting military history over the past few centuries. By the time World War II broke out, due to its natural harbors and resources, both the coal and steel industries in Sydney were heavily supplying the war effort. The decision was made to protect the port city of Sydney and surrounding coastline from attack. Some fortifications were built over World War I batteries, and most of them were operated until well after the war had concluded. Then, as luck would have it for me, they were abandoned. As I explore what remains of each of the structures, I will fill them in on this map. By the end of this series, we'll be able to see the entirety of the coastal defense placements during World War II. So, let's dive right in and check out these remarkable structures. I've decided to start with the one most familiar to me, as I grew up near this site, just called the Fort by us kids. About 6.5 kilometers from the entrance to Sydney Harbour, facing the Atlantic, it has been heavily explored by locals over the past 80 years since it's been abandoned. In the late 1930s and early 1940s, the whole site would have been guarded by a garrison of over 200 men and served as a long-range counter-bombardment coastal gun battery. Within the last 20 years, the observation tower we called the fort has been removed, and the gun placements and bunkers have been filled in. A tragedy for many of the locals with fond memories of exploring these ruins. I knew every inch of it, and would loved to have shown you the observation tower. But one structure remains after 80 years. This one-story concrete building was the battery commander's observation post and plotting room. Lingan Battery was built in 1940 by J.P. Porter and Sons at a cost of approximately $200,000, which would cost $4.3 million adjusted for 2024. This building would have looked a lot different then, as it would have been disguised to look like a 1.5-story private clapboard home. The concrete walls were molded like lapboard siding to mimic the side of a house, and the roofs were even pitched. The stress and boredom experienced by the soldiers in these rooms is lost to time, and can only be imagined. U-boats proved to be a formidable foe, well armed with large deck guns that could wreak considerable havoc, even as the war was winding down. I don't know much about how these rooms would have functioned, and I wonder at all the nooks and crannies, but without photo evidence of the inside, I can only guess what some of these things were used for. Some things are more obvious. This is what's left of the pedestal for a depression rangefinder that directed the battery for close-in fire. The parcel of land this building was built on was once owned by John T. Laffin, sold to the government by one of his descendants before the war. The main building, or the fort itself, was a 2-story fire-control concrete observation post built almost on top of what would become Lingan mine site, which is now also empty and abandoned. It would have stood right where this patchy grass is now, on top of the high ground, 300 meters behind the gun positions. A view slit looking seaward, surrounded by a large, flat, L-shaped building. This was the combined battery observation post and battery plotting room that directed long-range fire. They ranged their targets using a position finder on a pedestal in the center of the observation slit in the room at the top. The room in the rear was designed to house the fire direction table and other necessary tools for accurate long-range artillery fire. Coincidentally, it's just up the street from the property where my grandmother was born and raised. The Lingan mine site was likely the location for the barracks where the infantrymen were stationed. Directly across where the street is today, which originally ran through a different location, was one of the gun emplacements and ammunition bunkers. You can still clearly see the outline of the gun emplacement today from above. This is the only one I can find that is still clearly seen. In total, there were 3 35-ton 6-inch Mk7 quick-firing guns in 3 separate batteries, 300 feet apart, in 1941, along with one 20mm Hispano anti-aircraft gun, with another 3.7-inch anti-aircraft gun added in 1945. The turret-style, high-angle coastal mounts allowed a maximum firing elevation of 45 degrees, giving a range of about 23 kilometers, which when fired caused the collapse of a nearby barn owned by a family who had refused to move until the firing started. Lost to time are the wooden fire control observation posts in nearby New Waterford and North Head, and a second naval signal station somewhere in Scotchtown. I have no idea where. Walking out today through the Lingan wind farm, I'm a bit overcome by the changing skyline of my old town. I left in my 20s, and when I made it back home in my 40s, the fort and mines had gone and were replaced with windmills. A completely different image to what I had grown up with. On this day, the snow was light, and the trail out along the fence line was marked by rabbit and fox tracks. I'd been to this place once as a teenager, but there was a lot more forest here then, and it was a lot easier to get to today. I hope these buildings can last for future generations interested in our wartime history. And that was my trip to Fort Lingan. Where will I go next on this beautiful island known for its stunning landscapes and rich history? Do you know of any abandoned sites you'd like to visit with me? Let me know in the comments and hit that like and subscribe. Join me next time as we embark on a journey to uncover the mysteries hidden within abandoned Cape Breton.